New charges have been filed in the death of One Direction star Liam Payne. Now, 5 people have been charged in Argentina in connection with Payne's fatal fall from a hotel balcony in October. The hotel manager and receptionist and a friend of Payne's all facing manslaughter charges at this point. 2 others are charged for supplying drugs to him. Here with us now, Misty Marris, trial attorney and legal analyst. You know, Misty, I think a lot of us thought, something more could be coming with this because it all just seemed a little shady when we first heard how this all went down. Officials say these charges stem from the fact that Payne was too intoxicated to take care of himself. So first of all, do we have a similar concept in American law? And what do you make of these new charges?
Yeah, Laura, so this definitely was a case that was evolving as new information came out. So some are a bit more cut and dry. Of course, we have very similar laws with respect to providing drugs to an individual. So some of these charges relate to distribution and use of drugs. So that is all in a very similar vein. If an individual is involved in that chain of providing the drugs to another person, they can be charged with a crime. So that's one bucket. The other bucket is a bit more of an interesting legal theory because it's really a negligence or recklessness standard, meaning that these individuals, the hotel manager, the friend, they were aware that Liam Payne was in distress, that he was a drug user, and they left him in a vulnerable situation. So it's basically bringing criminal charges based on inaction. So that would be similar to what we have in the United States as a manslaughter or criminally negligent homicide type charge. Although here they do seem to differ in the sense that much of this is based on omission, a failure to act as far as taking an affirmative step about something. So this should be an interesting case to watch play out on those legal theories.
Absolutely. You know, the judge overseeing the case says that the 3 were charged with manslaughter for creating a risk that resulted in Payne's death, whether by action or omission, as you just said. So can somebody be charged with a lack of action? Because I was thinking about it, they took him up to the hotel room, allegedly, and he was intoxicated. They put him in the room, they closed the door, and there was this balcony, right? So you would think that they would put him somewhere safe or lock the balcony and take the key with them. That's what I keep thinking about. So when you talk about that omission part, tell us a little bit more about how that can be charged.
Right. So here's the way that it would play out in the courtroom if and when this case actually goes to trial on those manslaughter charges. There has to be knowledge that there is a risk and then that there was a breach of what a reasonable person would do under the circumstances. So in this case, were these individuals aware that he was using drugs? Were they aware that he was intoxicated? When putting them in the room, is that enough to say that putting him back in that room with a balcony is a reckless act because it's likely to result in severe injury or death? So much of this case, Laura, is going to be based on their state of mind and what they knew prior to putting him back in his room or prior to allowing him to go to his room. Now, look, the legal theories are going to be a bit different. The friend is going to be a different set of facts and circumstances rather than those individuals who work at the hotel, who, he's an individual who has a room at the hotel. To what degree did they interact with him prior to that time? What did they know? And did they fail to see that risk leading to a criminal charge?
Right. I mean, in theory, they don't know him, right? They don't know what he's capable of, what his drug habits were, and all of that. Let's switch gears and talk about some of the big cases we're going to be watching in the new year. You and I have been talking a lot about several of them. We're going to start with Scott Peterson. The LA Innocence Project, as we know, is trying to prove he's not guilty of killing his wife, Lacey, and their unborn child in 2002. The judge agreed to retest at least one piece of DNA evidence. That would be the duct tape that was found on Lacey Peterson's pants when she washed ashore out of the San Francisco Bay. So we're all waiting to find out how this is going to turn out. What are Peterson's chances of getting maybe not the conviction overturned, but maybe a new trial or another look? How is this going to work?
Yeah, Laura, so we've been following this case so intently, especially since the Innocence Project took it up. And I know you've been following it for many, many years. But really, while there's a victory because this one new piece of duct tape is actually going to be tested, and the argument was what lab are we going to use between the defense and the prosecutors, and ultimately that decision was made, and we'll see what that testing yields. There was a whole slew of other evidence that the court actually declined to either reopen or to test. And so really, while there's a victory, there was a significant amount of other evidence that really isn't going to make it back into the analysis. So whether or not there's something on that duct tape that would be that's forensic, that could lead to overturning the conviction, that would be tremendous and a huge victory. However, if it's inconclusive and there's not something that cut and dry, it's unlikely for it to succeed, because remember, the standard is super stringent. Not if there's new evidence, that new evidence not only has to be something that not only has to exist and be new, it also has to make a difference in the outcome of the case, or be likely to make a difference. So it's a very, very high standard to overturn these cases at this stage.
Right. And plus, with the technology that has changed so much, we've all been talking about DNA technology. And I'm glad you brought up, the lab thing about where it was going to be tested, because that is the very issue. I was just in court for Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach case, the accused Long Island serial killer. He was recently charged in the death of a seventh woman, Valerie Mack, on Long Island. Heuermann back in court mid-January, so we've got this big case coming up. What do you think we can expect from his defense team? Because Michael Brown, his defense attorney, has said, look, I don't even know about where this stuff has been tested that has led to these new charges. And so that's going to be a Fry hearing, and it's a little bit in the weeds, but it's important.
Absolutely important and critical to both sides. So you have prosecutors linking Rex Heuermann, 6 out of 7 of these cases, using DNA technology. And one of the methods that's been used in this particular case is what's called SNP. That's a very evolving methodology of testing DNA. And that's what you're going to see the defense challenge at the upcoming Fry hearing. So Fry hearing, it's the name of a case in New York. It's the standard for when expert testimony can come into the courtroom. Is this methodology accepted in the community, in the scientific community? So that's going to be the standard. And so you're going to see the defense challenge every aspect of that DNA evidence, because Laura, as we know, while there's a lot of different pieces of evidence the prosecutors are tying together with respect to Rex Heuermann, the case becomes very different if some of that DNA evidence were to ultimately be excluded. So it's going to be with each individual victim in the case that DNA evidence is going to be under scrutiny. And to the extent that defense is successful, then there's going to be an analysis about how to proceed on those cases. But look, that DNA evidence is absolutely going to be at the core of the case. And even if it surpasses the Fry hearing, so meaning it's admissible ultimately at trial, you're still going to see a battle of the experts when you get into that courtroom from the defense side, trying to undercut either the collection, the preservation, the chain of custody. There's many different aspects to that scientific evidence.
Misty Marris, thank you so much. I know that you're out in Suffolk County. You know that area very well. Maybe the next time we go to court, we can bring you with us and have you in the courtroom. That would be kind of fun.
Absolutely, Laura. I'm happy to be there with you.
Goals for 2025. All right, Misty Marris, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.
All right.